Well, good morning. This is Josh and JB with Radiant Reflections Season 4. This is episode I don't know.
February, is it 16?
16, I believe. Yeah.
This is the hard part about shooting multiples in one fell swoop.
Right.
Didn't we shoot 13, 14, 15 last time we sat down?
14 and 15. I don't think we shot 3, did we? It was only 2.
Maybe it was just 2.
I don't remember, but
I don't know.
Regardless, we're happy that you're listening and or watching this with us. By the time you watch this, you'll have already had a great Christmas, we hope. We are filming this before Christmas, as you can see, because the lobby here at Radiant Life is still full of wonderful Christmas decorations. So we hope you had a great time. As always, we want to remind you that on Season 4 of Radiant Reflections, our goal for you is that as we go through this book, Practicing the Way, Be with Jesus, Become Like Him, Do as He Did by John Mark Comer, that you would begin developing your own rule of life. And that's something that we'll get to as we get to the end of this book, which we won't today. Don't get your hopes up.
Yeah. We're not there yet.
No, we're not there yet. But drinking some absolutely wonderful coffee. I'm going to try to, yes, I can. Look, I can cover it up. Josh, this is an Ethiopian Dera Kadama Natural, which we have had from the Kadama farm before. It is a natural process, thus obviously the natural name. It is from Metric in Chicago. I picked this up. Where was I going? I think I was going to Virginia for work. And anytime I have a flight out of Chicago, I will go to the city early to go to Metric because the coffee is phenomenal from Metric. And I picked a couple bags up. What are you tasting, Josh?
I am going to register my flavor note guesses as lemon. I'm tempted to say lemon zest because lemon itself doesn't seem
punchy.
like it.
This is punchy.
It captures it. I'm going to say raspberry.
Raspberry, okay.
And just a minute ago, I had a third one, but now I don't remember what it was. Dude, it has such a good...
It's so good. I'm going with blueberry. It has a very blueberry taste. Lemon zest. I'm going to go with zest. I'm stealing yours, Josh. And I'm also going to say fruit punch.
You know what? That is interesting. I told you about that bag I got from Devo. Right? That had one of the notes on that was fruit punch, and that's legit. Oh. Like it had like a total fruit punch vibe. Now that you say that, I can't get it out of my brain. And I do think some of the mouthfeel is that. So I'm going to steal. Yeah. You steal my lemon zest. I steal your fruit punch.
There we go. So because it's very clear, this is not a heavy or dense coffee. It's light tasting. The mouth feels really light. Okay, here we go. This is from the Karum Wolisha variety. It is elevation 2,100 meters, and
it's like candy, man. Like it is like candy.
Okay,
it's
okay. I don't even know what 2 of these things are. I don't even know what this is.
Which means we are wrong.
What is a pluot?
A pluot, that is a plum apricot blend, I believe.
Okay.
My dad would know.
Is Sura?
I have no idea.
We're gonna have to Google that. Lady Google will tell us.
I don't know what
I know what a pomelo is.
You do?
Yeah, pomelo is. I think it's a clementine and an orange together. It's like a little orange thing. So I think we're really close though. But I kind of want to know what is a Sura. We're gonna ask.
Syrah. Is that how that's spelled?
Syr. Huh. Oh, it's a type of wine.
Oh.
Shiraz?
Does it give us a pronunciation?
Syrah, also known as Shiraz, is a dark-skinned grape variety grown throughout the world.
Okay, well, you've got Google. What is pomelo?
You've never heard of a pomelo?
I've never heard of a pluot. I've heard of, but never a pomelo.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm wrong. It's not what I thought it was.
Well, yeah, you said orange something.
That looks like a lime.
That does. It's
Citrus maxima. Is pomelo a grapefruit? It's a hybrid of a sweet orange, crossing between a sweet orange and a pomelo. Wait.
How can it be a cross between itself?
Who knows?
And something else.
You guys know us, viewers, listeners. We don't get this right very often, so. But we always on Radiant Reflections, always, every of the times, except when we film multiple events or multiple episodes, we always have great coffee here.
It's true.
This
is a very good cup of coffee.
Very special. So much so, you guys probably notice, usually we have the little, there's 6-ounce tasters, which is what we have in the green room, just little ones. We opted for a 40-gram brew this morning so that we could have a big cup.
Which means by the time we shoot the next episode, we'll be really excited.
We will be zooming.
We're going to be so excited about that episode.
Josh, practicing the way, be with Jesus, become like him, do as he did. The last episode, we finished number 2 of the title, the subtitles of the book, which was to become like Jesus. Now, this last third of the book, listeners and viewers, we're going to tackle this bottom one here, do as he did. So this, Josh, we know, because we've read the book several times now, is about what? The how. Both. What would you say, Josh?
I mean, we get into the practices.
The practices themselves.
Which, again,
the what?
That then kind of goes along with the idea of the rule of life. Mm-hmm. So, which, we've talked about that. But, I mean, he gets into, we won't get there today, but kind of like those 9 core practices that you see in the life of Jesus. And eventually we'll get there, which if you've been hanging around Radiant Reflections for any length of time, the practices are not anything new to our conversations.
No.
We just maybe learn a little bit of something different, a little different perspective on them as we navigate practicing the way together.
Yeah.
So it'll be good. So we're jumping in. What's the page number there, JB?
We're jumping in at page 120, which is, just, again, do as he did. So how do we do as he did? It's interesting. A lot of times in the mornings when I pray these things. These 3 things, Lord, as I'm going downstairs to spend time with him, I say, Jesus, here, I'm coming right now. I'm coming to be with you. And then as I'm doing the things, I'm like, help me to become like you. Do as you do. Kind of, again, stealing Nicole's sage-like prayer, which is?
Lord, help me be in the right place at the right time. Do and say the right things.
Do and say the right things. Yeah, I say that. It's talk like you, be like you. Yeah, what's sticking out on page 120?
120. Yeah, this is just. He, as you go down towards the bottom, he says, note the verb began, right? Because he's quoting Acts 1. I wrote about all that Jesus began to do and to teach. And he says there at the bottom, the implication is this book, Acts, is about what Jesus' disciples continue to do and teach. Because obviously Jesus had a limited duration. His ministry was 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And then he's gone, right? I mean, he's, killed, resurrected, ascends to heaven, and his disciples carry this movement forward.
Yeah.
It's not just that like, Jesus did this stuff and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
No, like it continues on. And you and I are part of
the book of Acts,
continuing to do that right here. So I see you have it highlighted though too. So maybe we bump over to 121. Those 4 things.
Yeah. This comes from.
So Mike Breen is
down in Decatur.
First,
right?
Well, they have a group down there that does it.
I remember you brought this back years ago, Josh.
No, so I don't remember how we.
Shape training or whatever.
The shape training, yeah. So Mike Breen, he's a pastor out of the UK.
Okay.
And we ran a couple of he calls them like huddles here. Okay. But then I went down, holy Moses, I'm forgetting the
Grace
name
Church.
of the church. Yeah.
Grace Church.
I met with a guy down there because they use this stuff heavily. I know
Craig.
I think Ian and Lily ended up having some exposure to this as they went through
their
some
worship
some
pastor
training there.
is the founder of Sons and Daughters Worship Camp. Yeah, so dear man of God, mighty man of God, Craig Eckrite.
So Mike Breen, he put shapes as kind of visual representations to different discipleship aspects, and he uses the square to describe apprenticeship here, or and how do I disciple somebody else? And JMC gives us those same 4 things here.
Right.
Step 1. So let's say
Let's say I'm training. You're training me how to shoot a podcast.
Right. So step 1, I do, you watch. I do all of the requisite,
setup
tasks to get this set up, to get the audio going, to get the video going.
Yep.
And you're just there. Maybe you're taking notes, but you're observing what is happening.
Exactly.
Over time, I continue to be the primary, doer.
Yes.
But you jump in and you're going to help. I'm going to say, oh, hey, JB, could you, shift that light, or, go hit this
Your
key
responsibility
on the
is lights
keyboard.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you begin to do that. Eventually there's a tipping point where now you become the primary doer and I help.
Right.
So now you're doing most of the setup.
I can poke you and
you're
ask.
just going, oh, hey, yeah, Josh, would you mind setting that light? I just, this setting's a little bit off. Could you tweak that thing?
Yep.
Then I would do that. And eventually we get to the point where I'm just hanging out in the background. Like you're doing everything that needs done, and I'm watching. So you have that inversion take place over time.
I do, you watch. I do, you help. You do, I help. You do, I watch. Josh, we use this exact kind of training in the worship team. And then depending on the level of influence of that particular task or potential consequences of that task failing, we actually have a certain number of sequential perfect executions. So you have to do this task with just the fourth step, which is you do, I watch, with perfect execution this many number of times before this is fully on your plate. If on attempt 3 you make a mistake on that execution, we go back and we start over, because we have to be sure, depending on what it is, this has to be right. This has to be right. Sometimes, there's that 80% rule with entrusting to others. If someone can do something 80% as well as you can do it, it's time to entrust them to do it.
Yeah, you just have to sometimes you have to be really specific about what that 80% involves.
Right.
because if the 20% they can't do is the most critical 20%,
that drops it below 50. Yeah. So you're saying it's a weighted scale.
I think so.
Yes.
I think so. And I think this is, sometimes in church world, just in general, I think we do people a disservice because we chuck this whole model out. We're like, oh, you know what? You have 2 arms and at least 1 leg. You
think there's a pulse there.
You could be a greeter.
Meanwhile, you have the most Eeyore person in the world greeting.
There you go. And we sometimes forget that even those things are a type of discipleship.
Yes.
There is an element of apprenticeship, even in some of those things. Again, here's the reality. Because sometimes, I've heard conversations, I'm not saying necessarily here, but in broader church world about oh man, you could train a monkey to be a greeter. You can't.
No.
Not everybody could be if you've ever been somewhere, whether it's a church, whether it's, whatever, there are greeters that from the moment you step foot in the door, they've made you feel welcome. Their presence is just it draws you in, right? And that person is really good at being a greeter. Maybe you've been somewhere and you walk in and you're like, I don't know if they even recognize that I'm here.
There's no sparkle in their eye.
That's right. It's that joy.
It's the joy.
It's that joy.
Yeah. Are they actually happy to see you?
We had, I won't name the business. Nicole and I were at a store. I won't even say where is it, but we were at a store and we put all of our items on the
conveyor belt. Yep.
And we're standing there, and the cashier, the individual, I won't even say whether it's male or female, the individual who was operating the cash register literally just stands there, and they're doing something. There's no acknowledgement that we're standing there even. And I'm like,
this is awkward.
This is weird. Yep. I bet you it was a full 3 minutes before this person. Yeah. And then it was even kind of it was odd.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes those are the individuals that we were like, here, you know what? Yeah. You've got a pulse. Say hi to people as they walk in the doors at church. That's not a commentary on any of our greeters. I'm sure we have wonderful greeters. Oh, the point being, sometimes we neglect training in things that we deem oh, that's simple. Anybody could do that.
Right.
Wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we would do well to lean into this model of apprenticeship more. So
you got the same thing highlighted that I do, Josh, at the bottom of 121. The final goal of an apprentice is to carry on the work of the master. At the end of the day, that's what apprenticeship is ultimately for. I want, the journeyman electrician that as he brings an apprentice in, I want that apprentice to be as capable as the journeyman eventually. That's the point of apprenticeship, which is what we are.
Yeah, it's very different than just a job shadow.
Right.
Like I remember like when I was looking exploring like occupational therapy, I went to a couple of different places just to job shadow.
Right.
Like I want to see, what do they do? Like, is this something that I could see myself doing,
Yeah.
8
Long
hours
term
a day, kind of a thing. And that's one thing. But then once I actually began the schooling and you're on your internship, your clinicals.
Yeah.
Like this is where I'm going room to room. I'm following my supervisor.
Yeah.
They're showing me, hey, here's how you do this. Here's how you do this. All right. And eventually, again, we walked through this process.
Absolutely.
Eventually now I'm doing it. And then, hey, you know what? They're going to pop in. They're going to see like, okay, yep, you're doing it. Oh, yeah, you screwed that up.
Don't hurt that person.
I did. I had one, I for a hot minute, I thought I was going to get kicked off my internship.
Wow.
So, no, I had did a controlled lower with somebody. So,
okay.
Which is that's the really fancy, less liability way of saying. I mean, it was controlled, but a fall.
Okay.
So yeah, and
whoa,
my supervisor was upset. So
you got the wrath.
I did, and I mean, and that's all right. I mean. Yep. But even that, I appreciated they used that as a learning experience. There were some things in the preparation for that treatment session that I should have asked but didn't. And so the cool thing is my supervisor in that case, she leveraged that failure to actually help me become a better practitioner. So
fantastic. Yep. Fantastic. 122, Josh. Continuing with goal number 3, which is to do as he did. We're just tracking, man.
We're
tracking. Spirit's speaking the same things to us. Go ahead, read that middle section.
If you are an apprentice of Jesus, your end goal is to grow and mature into the kind of person who can say and do all the things Jesus said and did.
I just heard Dallas Willard this morning. There's a brand new podcast out that Dallas's daughter is putting out. Josh.
Good stuff.
You want to subscribe to this. It's Dallas Willard. It's him teaching. Like
she's
from the early
like,
80s.
Okay, so she just takes like audio?
Yes. But he talked about the point of discipleship and the point of apprenticeship is exactly what John Mark just said. But naturally and with ease is the way he defines it. Like by default. It's not like, I'm not going to lie here. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. You just don't lie in that situation.
Right. I mean, it goes back to, the right brain, left brain, other half of church type of things. Like over time, right, this becomes the reflex. The way of Jesus becomes the reflex. Like that is the normal response to settings. Yeah. It's not like I got to work really hard. It's like, nope, that's the default setting. So I think that's what, when Paul talks about be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yes.
Like, I mean, it's rewriting the default settings in our brain.
Which there's a whole genre of study here. Kurt Thompson put out a book called The Anatomy of the Soul. I could not encourage you, listeners, viewers, enough to pick up that book. In fact, I just picked up a copy for my son Ian because he's very into psychology. Like it fascinates him. I think that in another life he might, if he wasn't a music teacher, he would probably be a psychologist. He's fascinated with the brain. And Kurt Thompson connects spiritual formation with neuroplasticity, with the prefrontal cortex, how it was shaped and formed. A very, very interesting science-based and empirical data.
I bet you I think Ian would do really well as a music therapist.
He would. He's a kind soul.
Well, because then you blend the two. We had those in the hospital. They would operate in different settings. So they would utilize, because they're looking at, what is the effect of music on the human brain? and how do we leverage this in a productive manner to, whatever it is. I mean, in some cases it's a calming. In some cases it's a, hey, actually we need to like get some stimulation.
Music is very powerful. I don't know which what college or university did this, but they had duplicate greenhouses, duplicate cloned plants. All the pH, everything in the soil was exactly the same. Water, climate, everything. And then in one of the greenhouses, they played classical music where the plants could hear. I don't know. And the other plants did not get that. And the plants that had the music flourished, even though it was literally same thing.
I mean, we tease my wife that she's a little bit of a hippie. But I mean,
little. Nicole's super crunchy.
She'll talk like we'll plant a tree or something in the yard. Yeah. She'll go out. She'll talk to the tree. I mean, she doesn't think that the tree is like a
spirit.
Person, no. None of that weird stuff.
Right.
But she will. She'll be like, oh, hey, you're doing good. Like, and because we planted a tree one time and it was like, I don't know if this is going to make it. And she's like, nope, this tree's going to make it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to talk to it. And that tree's doing great.
There's mystery. There's mystery that we don't understand. Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing about your wife. At the very bottom, 122. Willard. Beautiful. No, sorry. You've got something circled there.
Where are you at?
I was at the bottom of 120. I was going to read this section here from Willard. But you've got that there. You circled it.
I should probably read that.
No, go.
Probably read that.
Children,
that first thing. Middle of 122. Children often get this intuitively. They read the story of the Good Samaritan, and their first impulse is to stop every time you drive by somebody with a flat tire. After all, Jesus ended that story by saying, go and do likewise. Or they hear the stories of Jesus healing the sick, and the next time their friend from preschool has a cold, they hug them and pray for them to get better. But something happens to us over time where we are socially conditioned to dampen that impulse. What I circled is the question, what if that impulse is the spirit?
Well, we know it's the spirit because the enemy would never motivate us. Evil spirits would never motivate us to pray for others or to consider healing for another person. That's you know it for sure. It is the Holy Spirit. So when you have those sorts of impulses, Josh, I think that's a great way to be sensitive. You know, I've driven past tons of people with flat tires and walking down the road and had no real anything. But I've had times where it's like God says, no, you need to turn around and pick that person up. You need to take them wherever they're going. I don't know where they're going. Don't know why, but you need to pick them up. And maybe no meaningful conversation whatsoever. It's just like, hey, I saw that it's raining and you're driving down the road or walking down the road. I bet that stinks. Jump in the car. Let's get you where you are. A little drier than you were. That's it. That's all that's the only purpose. But it is the Spirit. So we need to be sensitive, listeners, viewers, to what the Spirit's saying in those moments. Bottom of 122 there. Willard defined a disciple as someone whose ultimate goal is to live their life the way Jesus would live if he were me. I like that. You know, that kitschy was the mid-90s. What would Jesus do?
The bracelets.
JD bracelets. Willard says, what would Jesus do if he were me? Right? Everybody has a different context, culture. The way that I would love and care for someone here in the Midwest is considerably different than the way my friend Jen, who's a missionary in India, in a culture that's completely different, would care and love for her neighbors. So 123, Josh, what's sticking out? Again, we've got the same stuff, brother. So good.
I starred that question you were just talking about.
Oh, that's on the next page.
Yeah, because
that's cool.
That is on the next page.
Okay.
Because it contextualizes it, right? It's not... and you saw this struggle in the early church, right? You had the Judaizers,
right?
The ones who would go to this newfound Jesus movement and say, no, hey, you have to convert to Judaism before you can actually be a Christian. Or and Paul deals with that pretty strongly, and he says, no. I think sometimes though, we do the same thing. We do Christian colonization sort of things, but and I think if we look at Jesus and think, oh, well, I've got to do everything the way Jesus would do things, I think, well, okay, well, what would And it's good to look at context, cultural context. What was the first century world? I think we can glean, a clearer picture of Scripture when we understand some of those things.
Yeah.
But I don't have to function as though I were a 30-year-old man in first century Palestine.
Right. Right.
So it's worth asking that question.
Yeah.
All right. How if
read it right
Jesus
there.
were a 41? Okay, yeah, you got it. You go for it.
I mean, it's exactly what you're saying, Josh. How would Jesus live if he had my gender, place, personality profile, age, life stage, job, resources, and address? I think that resources is an important one to think about. How would he show up to the world? How would he handle fill in the blank, right? I think that resources question is a big one, and it goes back to riches, right? And how God gives talents, one, and he expects a 3x multiplication, some a 5x, some a 100x multiplication. That multiplication isn't for gain, it's for expanding the kingdom. Mm-hmm. That's what Jesus means in Matthew 25 about the parable of the talent. He means, how do we take the things that God has entrusted as stewards over and multiply them for the furtherance of God's kingdom, which is in heaven, here on earth, not for fill in the blank.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, which is hard, especially this time of year, or this time of year that just passed that hasn't happened yet as we're recording it, but Matrix. Okay. Anything else at 123?
No, I think that's good.
All right. 124. Oh, I love the heading here. Jesus, the prototype. He is the example. He is God in flesh, which is what we consider. Actually, maybe by the time you watch this, we will be coming into, because I think it's January 6th every year, which is also Inauguration Day. It's Epiphany, which is...
So that Inauguration Day was January 20. January 6th is when,
the riots happened, right?
People lost their ever-loving mind.
Okay. You're right. It is 20th. But Epiphany every year is, I guess, January 6th. It's part of the church calendar, something I was not aware of. I know our Amish brothers and sisters down and south of us here, where I live, Indiana land. You see that meme?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Indiana land.
We won't go. Huh. At any rate, I'm just getting ready to read that copy, those books, those little books.
Yeah.
I just finished the Christmas one.
Okay.
And I read the Advent one before that as I was going through Advent. So now as I finish the Christmas one, I'm going to go into Epiphany one. But this idea of Jesus appearing and Jesus being the incarnational prototype for us in flesh, that's what Christmas is about, is recognizing that Jesus became a person like us. He became a person. He understands. At any rate.
No, that's good.
It's sticking out. I've got that whole paragraph, Josh, that second one. Go ahead and read that.
Second paragraph on 124. Unfortunately, most Western Christians read the stories about Jesus, especially the miracle stories, not as a template for how to live, but as proof that Jesus was God, which he ties back to the Enlightenment. And he says that that's a pattern that we continue to see within our faith today. Right? We look at those things, and as we get into the conversation on the next page, it's like, well, yeah, like he could do those things because he was God.
Right.
I am not God, so I cannot do those things.
Right.
Even though Jesus told his disciples that you guys are actually going to do like greater things than I did.
Yeah.
And there's debate over the years of what that meant, but it seems pretty straightforward. And we still continue to see people functioning in their gifts of the Spirit. There are still miracles that happen. There's still healings that happen. There's still deliverance that happens. There's all these things still happen, and on a much broader scale, because Jesus was one dude in a specific geographical location at a specific time in history, but through the power of Holy Spirit working in his followers over the last 2,000 years, this has spread worldwide.
Exponentially.
So,
yeah. I'm of the personal persuasion the greater works are eternal works. They're not power signs, personally. It doesn't negate them.
I say, but power signs still happen.
They still happen, but they don't happen in greater frequency than we saw in Bible times. This is why I would say, like, when Jesus says to them, which is greater, that I tell this man to pick up his mat and walk, or that I tell him he could be saved? Which is greater? And he was being facetious. Jesus, the healing of the physical body is wonderful. It's great, right? But it's still not the greatest. The greater gift, the greater works are when light shines into darkness and a soul is transformed from darkness to light. When there's eternity, not just the healing of a body that's already decaying and is limited and finite.
Right. Well, and contextually, right, for Jesus to just tell somebody, oh, hey, your sins are forgiven, and sidestep the entire sacrificial system that they lived in. It was like, whoa, who are you to? And he says, oh, I'm
I can do that.
I can do that.
I'm allowed to.
Then, on the cross, obviously, he accomplished that for all who would choose to come to him. But
yeah.
All right.
What else? What on 125? Jesus, the prototype. What's sticking out?
Well, we just hit on some of it, but I mean, he talks about kind of how do we actually live into that, right? Not just use that as proof that Jesus is God. And right there in the middle-ish of 125, it says from the Holy Spirit.
The short answer.
Again, this is Holy Spirit working within us. So he says down towards the bottom, Jesus did what he did by drawing on his connection to the capacities of God.
In the last sentence there, Jesus did miracles not by flexing his God muscles like Thor, but by living in reliance on the Spirit's power. That kind of coming back to the humanity of Jesus and his actual reliance on God and his reliance on the Spirit while in the flesh. It didn't negate the fact that Jesus was God. He limited he set aside his Godhead, right? The hypostatic union is beyond our.
Yeah, we gotta.
Yeah. We won't even dive into that water. 126. What's sticking out to you, Josh?
Towards the end of that first paragraph, in Jesus' incarnation, we also see what a real, true human being is like. Right, he says we see what God had in mind from the beginning, right? Because Jesus was he was tempted by sin, he was uncorrupted by sin.
Correct.
Right, so you do have in the person of Jesus a perfect human being, and I don't know. That's kind of one of the things we're working towards.
Yeah,
in eternity,
Well, and now,
and we're in the process now. We're in the process now.
Our Wesleyan discipline talks about complete sanctification, which whatever you think or don't think about that. And our Eastern Orthodox brothers and sisters call this theosis, or the process of becoming like God, which we would call following Jesus, right? Jesus was God. So as we act, talk, do the things that Jesus did, that is theosis. That's what's happening in our lives. And again, our Catholic and our Eastern Orthodox brothers and sisters, they look at theosis in a very stepped way, right? So there's actual saints. There are people who have lived lives to a place of sanctification and a place of connection with God that yielded actual fruit and miracles that are hard to negate. And that's why there are some that are saints. Not everybody's everybody is a saint.
Not everybody is sainted in the
Yes. Which again, listeners, viewers, your thoughts and opinions on what that means or how it applies to you it's something to consider. It's something to consider.
Now, we were ahead of the game, apparently, because down bottom of 126, he gets into it. And he talks about kind of the debate between theologians. But he says, whatever he meant by greater things, he doesn't mean lesser things.
I love that.
Right. So no matter what you do with it, right? Like, like the outcome of these things is not going to be smaller than what Jesus did. So I like that summary.
Yeah. Those next two paragraphs on 127, second and third, I should say. This is the only possible way we can do what Jesus would do if he were me. If Jesus did his work in the power of the Spirit, how much more do we need the Spirit to carry on that same work? Thankfully, there's good news. Jesus did not leave us dependent on our natural abilities, talents, and energies, or lack thereof. He gave us his Spirit to empower us with his capacities, to do his work by his power, not our work by our own very limited resources. And again, our Eastern Orthodox brothers and sisters would define this as the divine energies. Each of us have this capacity and or divine energy that's been given to us. We would call it grace. Grace isn't only unmerited favor, right? It's God working in us. That's what grace is. Grace is God working in us in our lives. I just finished that little summary of Tyler Staton's book that doesn't come out until like February or something. But he highlights something that I had never really meditated on. And Josh, I'd love your thoughts because it's tied right into this. Jesus said when the disciples argued with him about him leaving, he's like, no. They're like, no. He's like, it will be better if I leave. And we often think like, if Jesus was here on earth with us, how amazing would that be? But Jesus himself said, actually, me leaving is better for you. The Spirit's presence in you, in the world, and empowering you to do my will is better than Jesus being on earth in the flesh.
Well, some of that is super practical because again,
talk about that because it feels so strange to me.
In choosing to take on flesh, to take on a human body, Jesus was limited, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago, right? Like, I mean, he was in first century, Palestine, right here at this time and place.
Yeah,
and that's it. Like, I mean,
right.
he wasn't in North America.
No,
he wasn't in Asia. He wasn't in Australia,
but he is now.
Wow. So
I mean,
Josh. we
so he has become omnipresent by his Spirit living in his new temple, which is us, and scattered throughout the world. That
scattered yet united. So you still, because we are, Paul talks extensively about like the unity in the Spirit. So you and I, like, it's not that, here, there's the Australian Holy Spirit and the American, like, no, like this there's one Spirit and we are all united.
One baptism.
In this. Yeah.
One body.
Yeah.
Yeah. How often we forget that unity that's in the church.
That's where I think more and more, like as we go, like from an ecclesiology standpoint, like I think like we have local assemblies. I am, and you don't have to agree, but
your 2 cents.
More and more, I don't refer to Radiant Life as the body because we're part of a global. We're like a skin cell or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah,
I agree.
we are a local assembly, like, and that's
a holy and sacred assembly.
And that's a real thing. But when we talk about the body, there is this this unity that we see, and that is everybody all together. So, and
the big question is, what binds us together? One body, one baptism, one faith, one
Spirit,
faith, one Spirit, one body, one baptism. Yeah. What else? Anything that Nouwen quote at the bottom of 127, and again, Henry Nouwen is astounding. If you're ever interested, any art fans, there's a painting by Rembrandt of the prodigal son. Henry Nouwen has a book called The Prodigal, and it's all based on his understanding of that painting and how it affected him. Really, really good book. Sorry. Henry Nouwen. Jesus' life moved along a continuum from solitude to community to ministry. Man, look at that. It's time with Jesus, then being in community with other people, then going out, alone, together, out. I don't even know how to describe that, but what else, Josh? We're kind of getting close to the end of our time.
Let's set up this first half of 128.
Beautiful.
So Comer talks about categorizing Jesus' ministry into 3 basic rhythms. 1, making space for the gospel. 2, preaching the gospel. 3, demonstrating the gospel. And yet maybe we wrap this episode up and then we start our next episode we journey through those. Well, we'll see where we.
Yeah, we get through a couple rhythms.
Yeah, we'll see if we can tap into those rhythms.
Yeah, well, I mean, as always, we're so thankful, listeners, viewers, for your attention, for your time, the 40 minutes that you just spent with us. Don't forget to like and share this. Again, we're continuing to try to grow the subscribers to the YouTube channel specifically. So if you would, if you're not subscribed, click that subscribe button right now, click the like button, and maybe share this video on your timeline on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, wherever else you can share.
You know what they should do? Like, isn't like a TikTok thing? They do like weird dances and stuff.
Well, I think they used to. I don't know if they do.
Is that not
anymore.
a thing, dude? I don't know. I've never had it.
Right.
We were talking about that.
I have
before.
it, but it's for work. I don't do anything with it. A social media manager does stuff with it.
If we have like any of the younger generations that listen, somebody should like create a Radiant Reflections TikTok dance thing. Dude, I don't
Haley
get it.
is the person that runs our Get Up.
My kids will do like, they'll be like, oh, do like the hurdy-gurdy gritty thing or whatever. And they'll do these. I'm like, what is this even?
I don't know, man.
I remember back when I was still working with the students all the time, like they did like the hype or something. And like they just have these random dances. Somebody should come up with like a Radiant Reflections TikTok dance.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I'll tell you what, if you come up with like a good Radiant Reflections TikTok dance, I'll buy you a bag of coffee.
Yeah, send us the TikTok.
And if we get like 50 of them, we'll come up with some way. Haley, you'll have to do this because I don't know how to like have people vote on a favorite.
That'd be cool.
And then I'll buy that person a bag of coffee.
Cool. Impetus to subscribe, like,
basically
share,
just want
and
people
dance.
to have good coffee.
Yes. Oh, we love it.
If we can find an excuse to do that.
Speaking of good coffee, Dustin Miller, I know he really enjoyed the bag of Proud Mary.
Okay, did he? You know what? I was going to try to connect with him.
He and his wife Jennifer are going down the dark hole of coffee. I think he shared with me they agreed this year they weren't going to exchange gifts and they were going to have one collective gift that they bought for the two of them. And it was a Gaggia Classic Pro espresso machine, which is a really nice machine. Chad Seahad's got one of those. I started with one of those. Great machine. Phenomenal machine. Anyway, we won't go into the coffee world. Like, subscribe, share. Join us next time. This has been episode 16 of Radiant Reflections. Don't forget, maybe even while you were listening today, while you were watching today, there's something that's like, oh man, I think that's a discipline or a practice that I need to adopt and it needs to be part of my life. Write that down. I have a note in my phone. I'm on Apple, so it's Apple Notes. And it's my rule of life. And it's broken into 3 categories. And I have these things that I do in each of these categories. That's what we want for you to do. I review that every couple weeks. I may modify it. I may change it. Generally, I don't change it. But a rule of life is our goal for you. So come back next time. We will be episode 17.